Hi, I'm Barry Ostrowski. At Barnabas Health, we believe citizens need to be informed about the important healthcare issues affecting their lives. That's why we're proud to support healthcare programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners on public television.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Wells Fargo, the New Jersey Education Association, NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, Barnabas Health, Life is Better Healthy, MagnaCare, New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation, and by the Mental Health Association in New Jersey. Promotional support provided by The Record, North Jersey's trusted source, and NorthJersey.com, and by Commerce Magazine.
This is One-on-One.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
People like laughing at others, so I don't mind if the other is me.
See, you go right into the character. That's what it is.
I'm bringing families together a half an hour each week. Man, I'm doing something special.
And so I do feel successful.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. We're at the Tisch WNET studio in the heart of Lincoln Center. It is our honor to welcome the Reverend Al Sharpton to our studio. It's the first time you're in this studio?
In this studio, yep.
You've been in a lot of studios, right?
One or two.
You've been in your studio every night at right down the street.
Yeah.
At
30 Rock. Yeah.
30 Rock. Host of MSNBC's Politics Nation on every night from 6 to 7.
Right.
And also the founder and president of the National Action Network. Reverend, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Steve.
It's a fascinating time, which we're talking at the end of June 2015. This program will air after. Talk to us about the horrific events of what happened in South Carolina.
Well, the morning of the day that it happened, I was in Washington. I was a guest at the installation of Loretta Lynch, the first African-American woman to be the Attorney General of the United States. And I sat there right behind her family, and I felt how it was such an awesome day seeing the first black woman installed Attorney General by the first Latina Supreme Court Justice, Sonia Sotomayor, on Frederick Douglass's Bible, first African-American president of the United States looking on. Doesn't get any better for this for civil rights activists. Get on the plane, come back, go by National Action Network, go do my radio show, my TV show, go home, get into bed. And the head of our South Carolina chapter calls me and says, 9 people were just killed at Mother Emanuel, a church I've been to frequently, including Reverend Pinckney, the pastor, who 2 months before had stood with me in Charleston at a vigil we were having for the police shooting death of Walter Scott. So in one day, Steve, I saw how far we've come as a country. Black president, black attorney general, female, Latina Supreme Court, and how far we still have to go with these racial slayings. I think the good news is we have come that far. The bad news is that we still have to deal with the fact that racism still exists. We've made a lot of progress, but we're not there yet.
Reverend, you know, in anticipation of having you on this program, there are so many things going through my mind, so many things I want to ask you, which is why we're allotting as much time as we have. But the one thing that I'm curious about is, in a recent Gallup poll, it talked about how whites and blacks, statistically, view race and race relations, and it couldn't be further apart. Why do you believe there is such a gap, a disparity between how blacks traditionally and today view race and race relations and whites? Because we do.
I think that a lot of it is that we talk at each other more than to each other, and we live in different realities. And people do not understand each other's reality, so therefore we get defensive or offensive rather than understanding. So, for example, if there is a police shooting.
Let's talk about those.
The reality is that in the black community, it is perceived as more of the same. In the white community, oh, you're against law enforcement, you're picking on cops, you're just stirring up the pot, rather than understanding that, yes, there's a criminal element that scares some in the white community, but yes, that you have these continued abuses in the black community by some in law enforcement that we don't see in other communities, and all of them are not right, but all of them are not wrong either. Everybody can't be fantasizing, and I think that we never try to meet in the middle and say, well, let's talk about this.
You know, I appreciate that point, Reverend, but it often strikes me that one of the struggles we have, even though I've got to agree, I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and was a very young child during the Newark riots that you know very well. And that affected my view of the world, and it affected the view of, I'm sure, my contemporaries who happened to be black and I went to school with, in different ways. But I will also tell you that I often struggle and wonder why we can't look at a particular situation that does involve a black youth or an adult, whether it be Eric Garner or whomever, and a cop who happens to be white, and try to look at the individual situation as best we can, instead of, quote, another incident involving a white cop and a black man, young or older. And that's one of the things I struggle with, because I sit there and say, I'm trying to look at the individual situation and not the pattern. Do you look at the pattern?
I think that the fact is, if you look, as you say, we're talking in late June.
Sure.
In the last year, just last year, you have Eric Garner, the chokehold case in Staten Island.
Which is hard to defend in any level.
All right. Before we could get out of that, 3 weeks later in August, we have Michael Brown in Ferguson. Then a few weeks after that, we have North Charleston. Then a few weeks after that. So it's on and on and on.
But they're not the same case, Reverend.
They're not the same case, but it's the same pattern of they're dismissed. People are said, what are you talking about? And they're all on videotape. They're all a tape. So you can't say...
Reverend, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
They don't all show the same thing.
They don't all show the same thing, but the same pattern of dismissal is, I think, what
the
causes
police are dismissed.
The police are, in terms of the concerns of the community, is dismissed. Let's get to a core issue that ties together your question.
Sure.
Why do people call people like me? Because they feel like no one will hear them, and they want somebody to make them not be ignored. So people will always complain to guys like you, Steve, why is Reverend Al raising hell? He just wants publicity. That's exactly right. That's why people call me, because they don't want people to ignore them. Do I want publicity? That's exactly what I want. On the cases, on the issues that I want. So they see that as a negative. That's why Eric Garner's family called me. That's why Michael Brown's family called me. That's why they call me in these situations, because they feel nobody's paying attention.
But at the same time, Reverend, point well taken. But there are many who look at certain situations like the Eric Garner situation in Staten Island with the chokehold and ask themselves, how could that possibly happen? Maybe you don't because you've seen it before from a certain perspective, and it's indefensible on any level that I look at it from those cops, no matter what is said. I'm not a cop.
Yeah.
I'm not black, but I can't defend it. But I also say this. There are many who do ask themselves, why is it that Reverend Sharpton never in any of these cases says, you know what, I've thought about this, and I can understand why the cop did what he did, and in this case, I choose not to get involved.
Well, all they have to do is come to National Action Network. I turn down cases every day.
So we only know about the ones you choose to be involved in.
Why would I have a demonstration and say, I'm going to march on the family, I'm not taking your case?
No, Reverend, here's what I'm saying. There are some who do and would love to hear you say that the cop, be they white or black, have an incredibly difficult job, and sometimes you, in fact, choose to say, in that case, justified.
Let's say, Steve...
That doesn't make any sense to you?
Not only does it make sense, I do it. I speak every year at the police academy for the training. You ever see that on the news? No, because they don't want to cover that. I meet with the police commissioner. You ever see that on the news? They do not cover that. They only cover if there is a situation where we're questioning the police. The former police commissioner, Ray Kelly, who was the author of Stop and Frisk that I protested, every year has the academy training at the Apollo Theater. Every year he had me come speak. He said, Reverend Allen, I don't agree, but I think you need to hear what he has to say about training. I think that Reverend Allen is basically a guy that's concerned about his community.
Not a lot of coverage.
None. So I think that that's a problem. Just like there are people on the police side that do a lot of things in our community. We have a National Action Network and Anti-Violence Squad. We go out in the street, we call our group Occupy the Corner, because the gun violence, we're the ones disproportionately hurt. The police go out there with us. That's not covered. But I think that all of us, again, are victimized by those that sensationalize at each other rather than talking to each other.
Talk about sensationalize. Baltimore. I'm sure you had strong feelings, you expressed them. The violence in reaction to the violence.
Totally wrong. When I went to Baltimore, I have a chapter in Baltimore, and when I went to Baltimore, I went to defend the mayor because I felt that...
She was in a tough spot.
She was in a tough spot, and for people to go out in the streets and rip off the CVS, rip off things that... What does grabbing some sneakers have to do with getting justice for a guy? I preached the funeral of Michael Brown and Eric Garner. I denounced the funeral, at the funeral, during the sermons, any violence. Some of the way left wings denounced me. What is he lecturing the people that are rioting for? Because not only are they hurting our community, they hurt the cause that they claim that they're concerned about. The families did not want violence. The family wanted redress, as I give credit to the families in South Carolina, which was not a police case. I'm talking about the case of the 9.
You've evolved on so many levels, not just physically. You're much healthier. You were talking about your early morning workouts,
right.
your diet, everything.
I work out every morning around 5.
And I would argue your diet's probably not the same.
No, not quite. No, I'm a vegetarian now, and I'm very cautious of what I eat.
Are you mellower?
I don't think I'm mellower. I think I'm more clear in what I'm saying. I think as you grow in age, you are more sensitive that your message is being clear. I still lead the march. Who led the marches in Staten Island and in a lot of these cases? I'm still doing what I always did, but I'm just more clear about why I'm doing them.
So when you look back, and you get asked this all the time, and if I didn't ask it, I don't feel like I'd be doing my job.
Go ahead.
And the National Action Network is doing important things. When you do look back at the Brawley case, do you say to yourself, I could have and should have handled things differently in the Tawana Brawley case?
I've said very openly that if I had to do Tawana Brawley again, I would do it, but I would do it differently. One, I would not be the spokesman for the victim, because when you're a spokesman for a victim, you have to say what they say. I would say, wait a minute, the organization wants to see a thorough, full, clear, fair investigation. And that's where I speak. I'm not the spokesman for the Gardner family or the Michael Brown family or any of these cases. I'm the spokesman for National Action Network, seeking they get a fair and just end. And I wouldn't make personal attacks. I think when you get into ugly personal name calling, that you reduce the value of what you're saying. And let's face it, you're going for the cheap soundbite. And I think this stuff is too serious to be handled cheaply.
Talk about serious. The National Action Network, very involved in voting rights issues. And you're very clearly concerned about, as we move into the 2016 presidential race, congressional race, the Senate races, about this issue because...
I'm very concerned that when you have the changing of voting rules, ending early voting days, state of Florida, state of Georgia, around the country, about 14 states that were not affected last time will be affected this time. So why are we cutting down on days people can vote early? Why are we stopping that you can leave church on Sunday, the Sunday before an election, and go and vote? What is the reason for that? Then the strict new voter ID laws that change in different states. Some states you have to have state-sponsored photo ID, like a driver's license or passport. Well, a lot of seniors don't drive. A lot of seniors don't have passports. Why are we doing that when there is no evidence of fraud with voter ID? So people say to me, well, Reverend Al, you don't believe people should have ID to vote? Absolutely they should. But why don't we have the ID we always had? Why do we need a new ID now? And when there is no fraud, the Justice Department said there's 0.0003% fraud. So it's like a solution looking for a problem. I think the country is healthier when everyone that wants to vote can vote and when everyone does not have impediments.
Barack Obama.
I think
1 to 10.
Barack Obama
1 to
came-
10. 1 to 10.
1 to 10, I'd give him an 8.
What stops him from being a 10?
Only because he's not finished yet, and I got to give myself room for, in case he
Is that
messes
the only
up.
reason, Reverend?
Yeah, I supported Obama.
I know you did.
And I supported him for specific reasons, and he's done those reasons. You know, people say to me in New York, why do you like de Blasio? Because he's doing what I supported him for. I mean, the people tend to like the people that they supported if they do what they supported them
Funny
for.
how that works that way.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton?
I'm not decided. I think Hillary's more good than bad.
Okay.
But I have not sat with undecided what I'm doing.
I have to ask you this one. I ask certain questions, this leadership question, to people who have been out there in leadership positions in tense situations. Biggest leadership lesson you learned over the many years you've been out front?
One is you got to take your emotions out of it. If you become...
You?
Yeah. You got to take your... In terms of... No, not your passion, not your drive, but you got to learn to deal with your temperament. I have had to really work on not being as highly emotional as I was.
You were a mentee of Don King's.
Well, no, I knew Don King. I was a mentee. I was raised in the Civil Rights Movement by Jesse Jackson.
Okay.
And Don King and I knew each other well, but Don was selling something. I'm trying to stand for something. And
Well
I think
said.
you've got to deal with your emotions if you're going to be effective.
Passion without the...
Passion without taking things personal and without tit for tat. Let your passion drive your cause rather than your cause try to catch up with your passion.
Biggest misconception about, for some, a few seconds left, about the Reverend Al Sharpton?
That you get personal gain out of this. I never had health insurance. That was in my 50s. I mean, there's no gain. People say, oh, he's in these cases for money. What money? I mean, first of all, many of the cases, police cases, they sue, they may get money 3 or 4 years down the road. So let me get this right, Steve. Something happens to somebody you know. I say, I'll take your case in 3 or 4 years from now, maybe you'll give us, what, $20,000? Now that I do radio and TV, I make that.
You know real money now.
Yeah, so I mean, what are you talking about?
Real quick, where can people check out your show on MSNBC? What time?
It's 6 o'clock Eastern every day on MSNBC, 6 to 7 p.m.
Reverend Al Sharpton,
And then
thank you for
get you
joining
some
us.
coffee, step and watch Steve.
Thank you, Reverend. Appreciate
I learned
it.
that from Don King.
Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this. Thank you, Reverend.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Here they are, Len Berman and Todd Schnitt. Did I get that right?
Well,
Todd Schnitt.
Schnitt.
Todd Schnitt, all right.
Schnitt.
Co-host of
Yeah.
Len Berman and Todd Schnitt in the morning. New York, 710 WOR. By the way, what time is this? What time? 6?
6 to 10 a.m.
Yeah, 4 hours together.
Yeah, 6
yeah.
to 10 a.m.
What's the chemistry
Which
like,
is
Len?
3 hours and 59 minutes too much. It's very interesting, but as you know what they say, if two guys sit around and agree all the time, then one of them isn't necessary.
You don't
So,
agree on much?
Some things. He doesn't like golf. I don't like guns.
Yeah.
There you go.
There it is.
I spent 22 years in Florida, so we've got a couple of
But he's a
differences.
big sports guy, and you love sports?
You know, I like certain aspects of sports, but I'm not a sports-crazed maniac. But listen,
He's not either.
I grew up in New York. I've been going to Mets games since I was a little kid. Family's from Flushing, so plenty of exposure.
Not a Yankee fan?
Yeah, listen, I went to my share of Yankees games. The family was split, but I ended up at Shea more than I did at Yankee Stadium.
By the way, I am really not a sports fanatic, and I think that's one of the reasons we're doing this show. This is not a sports show. It's general news, water cooler kind of show. And I don't think I was ever a fanatic. As a kid, I loved Mickey Mantle and the Yankees.
Same
Don't get me
here.
wrong. So that was my fanaticism. But Mickey doesn't play for them anymore, and I wasn't as crazy about the other sports. And I just always, and as I told Todd, I would read the newspaper from the front to the back. I wasn't one of these guys who was like buried in statistics.
Not your thing.
Yeah.
Well, folks think of Len Berman, decades at Channel 4 doing sports, that he must be a sports expert. But and you know plenty about sports. But what's amazing for Len is Len gets to now branch out and do material that he never had a chance to do.
And it's interesting. You quote unquote stepped aside from the television side. How many years ago?
Right, 6 now.
What brought you back?
Well, my wife said, get out of the house already.
That'll do it.
Well, I really give a lot of credit to our boss, Tom Cuddy, and I'm just saying this to blow smoke. He's the one who decided that, gee, Len, do you want to try a general talk show as opposed to just sports? And he had watched me in Boston 100 years ago when I was a sportscaster there, and he had watched me on Live at 5 and the 6 and the 11 in New York. And he just guessed, I had never met him, from the pitter-patter, or the patter, whatever you call it, that I could talk about other things besides just sports. So I really give him the credit for that. And he brought me in, gave me a couple of auditions. This went on for a long time. And they finally had me audition with Todd. And they said, I say this sincerely, they tell us the chemistry is great. I don't know.
I've heard you guys. It does work.
I think the terminology they used was, we were the least sucky audition.
Least crappy.
Least crappy audition.
But by the way, in the mornings, there had been some challenges, let's just say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the station wanted to turn that around and help the brand. And so you guys are the answer for now. And here's the, well, I shouldn't say for now. I shouldn't say for now. You guys are the, you guys they decided on.
I hope we're still on when the show airs.
No, I'm sure we'll be. Here's the thing that's fascinating. You're pretty conservative politically.
Politically, yes.
And does that, how do you describe yourself politically?
I don't. I'm not a label guy, and that's where we get in these huge fights, because Todd is certainly more conservative than I am.
I mean, give us an example.
He calls me New York liberal.
Okay, but I don't. Al Sharpton is on the other end. Okay,
right.
Al Sharpton led into this.
Sure.
Sharpton, you a fan?
No, and I want him to pay his taxes.
What? Come on, seriously. That's where you go right away with Sharpton.
Right. Listen, I'm not a Sharpton fan. I think he's an agitator. I think he's an instigator, and I can't believe he has the kind of access.
You're an Obama fan?
To 16. No, I'm not an Obama
You're
fan.
answering no for him?
But it comes
I've been listening to this for 5 months
now.
now.
It comes down to policy. If I agreed with Obama's policies, which I don't, then I'd be more of a fan. I'm just not.
You're going to ask me about Sharpton? I've said this on the air. I'm Jewish. I wish Jewish people had an Al Sharpton. I once had a major controversy with Don Imus on the radio when I thought he was anti-Semitic, and I said so on the air, and I didn't have a Jewish representative to have my back. So I said oftentimes, I wish there was a Jewish Al Sharpton. Now, do I agree with everything he does? It's obviously fairly biased. He doesn't stand up when blacks...
He has a point of view.
Well, he has a point of view. And he's very obviously an advocate for blacks.
But let me ask you something, because you've never been identified as someone who's quote-unquote overly political.
Right.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No. I don't enjoy the label game. I just think it's one step above schoolyard. I thought in the schoolyard you would say am so, am not, fatso, four eyes, ethnic slurs. And I always felt that kids would do that because they weren't intelligent enough to have a conversation. Now I think this political thing is one step above. You're a conservative. You're a liberal. You're a red stater. You follow Fox.
But you're on the radio, and labels are a part of the game,
but
right?
I think it's important to realize that our show is not a political show. Do we deal with politics?
Topical.
We're very topical, yes.
Yeah.
But the first thing that we want to achieve every morning, we're an entertaining, informative show. We want to entertain. Do politics creep in? If there's a huge political story, something the president has done, if there's a big policy decision, a big New York State politics story, is there a de Blasio story? Yes, we're talking about that. But the bulk of our show is not about politics. And in the talk radio format, there's been a lot of format fatigue because of the partisan politics.
And if you're not, excuse me for interrupting, if you're not entertaining, you're not keeping them there, and you're not doing your job.
Well, it was presented to me as a water cooler show. So what are people talking about on any given day? And that could be the upstate prison escape. It could be a machete attack in Bryant Park. So there's all kinds of things that are happening that people are just talking about. Todd came up with this great story the other day that was just phenomenal. A guy was suing, and he won his suit because he went in for a colonoscopy in Virginia, and he secretly recorded by accident all the doctors saying negative things about him.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing story.
It was Washington Post, actually. So out of Vienna, Virginia, the guy goes in for a standard colonoscopy. He had rolled the recorder on his smartphone during the pre-op instructions to find out what he should do afterward. He forgot to turn it off. His phone was recording during the entire procedure, and they were making just
fun of him.
horrific things. saying he had, syphilis in his
And something
genitalia,
about
that
it.
he had tuberculosis.
What did they say, Ebola of the penis?
You know, I mean,
They're
it was-
saying these things about him.
Yeah.
And they call
And how'd you wind up using it on the air?
because the audio surfaced in the court suit. And the guy won. He won $500,000.
Talked about the story.
Defamation.
Played
Did
the
people
audio.
want taking calls? People are calling, talking about it?
We didn't take calls on that segment, but that would have been a good. Steve should have.
We ought to hire him as a producer. For our show.
Come on.
Yeah, it's,
I've
that was
done
a good
some
idea.
morning radio. I get the whole
Natalie
idea of
does a
having to
great
keep an
job.
audience.
That's
a
You
good
have
idea.
You have a great team. You really do. But I got to ask you something. How much is it goes to that question? How much is scripted? How much is, hey, we're just feeling this right now?
Oh, there's nothing that's scripted.
No,
Zero. 4 hours, nothing scripted.
Nothing written.
No.
We know.
You walk in at quarter to six, or whatever time you walk in. How much?
4:30. That would be 4:30. I wish I could.
No
walk in
way.
at quarter to
No
six.
way. You're not walking in 4:30.
I walk in at 4:30. Todd sleeps in 15 minutes because he's up all night preparing.
I'm up until 11:30 prepping, so I'm not getting much sleep these days.
So we have piles of information and stories, and he has piles upon piles.
So you're walking in, you got all this stuff.
Right.
You decide.
Yeah.
Will
We
your
described
producer-
one of the big stories, and we said, "What do you want to talk about?" And then Todd decides what he wants to talk
Listen,
about.
I walk in every morning with Len. We talk about really the top
Right.
3, top 4, top 5 big items that we have. And then I have all the ancillary, the A-list, the B-list, the C-list, the morons in the news stories. And I kind of have an idea of what's big, what's going to carry the show. But it's pretty much spontaneous. It's kind of controlled spontaneity.
By the way, what's really funny is when he'll come up with a parody song that I don't even remember. Like the other day, he said Bomb Iran. I said, no. The name of the song is Barbara Ann.
Barbara Ann.
Yeah.
But there was a parody that was hugely successful during the Iran hostage crisis called Bomb Iran.
Bomb,
And it was
Iran.
hilarious.
And it was a
so
hit.
that became a moment. We played the song and that kind of thing.
And that came up because
Totally
obviously,
ad-lib.
the Iranian nuclear negotiations.
Look at you guys. You have the chemistry.
You think
That's
this
what
chemistry?
I feel. It's the public
Chemistry?
television. We feel these things.
Is it going to work?
I don't know.
It's-
We've been
you
5
guys-
months.
Listen, bottom line is we're doing
5 months.
We're doing
A few seconds left.
We're doing a radio show on 710 WOR radio that has not been done in New York for a very long time.
Listen, everybody, we're at time again, 6 to
10 a.m. Monday
Guys,
through Friday.
Check it out, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for joining us. You guys have something going here. It's a
Well, we
nice
hope so.
marriage.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Wells Fargo, the New Jersey Education Association, NJIT, Barnabas Health, MagnaCare, New Jersey Sharing Network, and by the Mental Health Association in New Jersey. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
I think at NJIT there are a lot of smart students.
I came to NJIT for mechanical engineering because with in-state, it's one of probably the top 3 schools for engineering.
It sort of creates a friendly competition where you can learn from them.
It's a great academic school.
I feel I'm being challenged, but at the same time, I love the classes I'm taking.
The atmosphere of being here is like being at an upstart company. It's that same kind of drive, that same kind of passion.